So in this video, I will talk about some points that helped me in my journey of self-development that I would like to share with you. So what is self-development? So self-development is when you realize that you are not the lower self and that you can dismantle it and let it go by seeing the illusion behind it. So your conscious you, your conscious awareness has the ability to step outside of a lower self and observe what kind of thoughts and feelings it's giving you, and then seeing the illusion behind this lower self and then let it go. So this process of letting lower selves go is known as self-transcendence or self-development, where one gradually connects more to their higher self. So you can think of your higher self as your higher potential, the better version of yourself. And every day you strive to become more than you were yesterday in terms of overcoming the limiting beliefs about yourself that are holding you back. You can sense the energy of a certain thought when you become aware of it by centering in your heart chakra and feeling whether it raises your energy or lowers your energy. So, for example, let's say a lower self is telling you that you are unworthy and it's projecting such negative feelings and thoughts towards you. And it is telling you that you need someone or something outside yourself to be whole and worthy. Such as thinking, only if I get these certain outer circumstances will I feel good about myself. And then in this case, your self-worth became dependent on outer conditions. But you can see that this lower self is based on a lie, on an illusion. Because in reality, you are unconditionally loved by God and you need no one and nothing outside yourself to be whole and worthy. So when you fully internalize this and accept it, you then can let this lower self go. But note that this process may take days, months, or sometimes even years. So you really need to be patient with the self. And never judge yourself when such thoughts and feelings arise. But of course, it is not about being perfect because there is no perfection on earth. But it is about realizing that you are not bound by any lower self and it does not define you. You are not the lower self, you are more than this. So although this process of self-development helped me, it does not mean that I'm striving for perfection or that I judge myself harshly when I get negative thoughts and feelings. But it does mean that I'm less identified with these negative thoughts and feelings. And gradually they will have less pull on your attention. Also, it is important to realize that there is no competition in uniqueness, because each one of us is unique and has unique gifts, and one can only be better than their self yesterday. So cleaning up the consciousness from lower selves gradually will lead to more higher inner experiences even if the outer situation does not change, which means higher inner unconditional peace, love and joy. And it becomes easier to flow with the river of life and be more in the moment. So the outer situation may or may not change with time, and there are many books about the law of attraction, but it is really not that one-to-one correspondence or linear process, as it may sometimes seem, but it is highly non-linear and complex. So if you really want inner peace and freedom, then focus on changing yourself instead of focusing on changing other people or being attached to change outer situations. You can strive to enhance your outer situation, but focusing on changing yourself and your reactions to the same outer situations is what will greatly enhance your life experience, because your life experience really happens in the mind. So by letting go of more lower selves, you will have higher responses to the same outer situations. And this is the power of self within you and in every one of us. And this, of course, can enhance your outer situation with time. So now let's see the situation when someone attacks you. So when someone attacks you, it is not their higher self that is attacking you, it is their lower self, this dotted line here. So contrary to the conscious you, the lower self has no self-awareness and it will mindlessly attack whatever it perceives as a threat. So knowing this, you can see that it is never personal and another person than you can be equally a trigger to the other person's lower self's mental images or beliefs. And at that moment, the other person cannot see their higher self, let alone see you. So you can hold the vision for the other person to be free of this, but also let go of any attachment to change them, and totally unconditionally forgive the other person to move on. But of course, this does not mean that anytime anyone tells us something negative that we don't need to look at our psychology if there is something that we need to look at or change. But we can sense when someone is lovingly pointing at something we need to look at in our psyche, and when it is done with an impure intent, because we can sense energy if it is coming from a place of unconditional unconditional love or if it is coming from a place of judgment or trying to put us down. And this is the basis of discernment, energy discernment, of knowing things by vibration alone instead of focusing on the outer forms or words or appearances. And this ability is in every one of us, and it can be enhanced more by clearing more lower selves. So I will talk more about intuition in the coming slides. Also, forgiveness does not mean that you need to continue to have a relationship with the person, especially if they decide to continue their abuse. And sometimes it can be a higher form of unconditional love to not have relationships so that they have an opportunity to look at themselves and their psyche instead of keeping to hurt themselves and others. But whether or not to have a relationship, you can only know this from within yourself by connecting to your intuition and what brings maximum growth to all involved. So from an energetic perspective, we are all connected. So it may seem that hurting another person will not hurt oneself, but this is just an illusion. So going back to thoughts. So being aware of thoughts during the day helps in keeping your consciousness clean. So if you become aware of a thought that you feel takes your energy down, you can decide to surrender it. Now you may have heard of the monkey mind that is constantly chattering, constantly giving you problems to solve, or generating negative thoughts and feelings. But it is not about silencing the monkey mind, because the more you try to stop or control these thoughts, the more they will come. But it is about realizing that even if you become aware of negative thoughts, you are not obligated to engage in every thought. You don't have to think it. So when you become aware of a negative thought, you just see it pass by like a cloud, without resisting it or feeling guilty about it. You just let go and surrender it. And it may help to say loud to yourself, I surrender the thought. This can happen in the first seconds when you become aware of a certain thought, before you unconsciously start thinking it, and then it will lead to another association and another thought, like a monkey that goes from one tree to another, but eventually it goes nowhere because it is still on the trees. But it is important to do this in a relaxed way without forcing it, just simply being more aware of your thoughts during the day, and let the negative thoughts pass by like clouds. And this becomes easier as one clears out more lower selves, because then even when negative thoughts arise, they will have less grip on your attention, gradually becoming kind of like a background noise that is inconsequential. So because everything is energy, as Einstein showed, where E is equal to mc square, which means that matter is energy that is stepped down in vibration by the square of the speed of light. So this showed that what appears as solid matter is really energy, and energy is vibration, and each vibration has a certain frequency. So nature has harmonious frequencies that facilitate healing, because when we interact with nature, we tune into these frequencies. And one such phenomena is known as resonance. So you may have felt relaxed after sitting for a while at the beach hearing the waves. So you can try many activities or simply just sitting for a while in nature, because negative thought waves tend to disperse in the vastness of nature. So one of the most efficient ways to tune into higher frequencies is the practice of gratitude. So as you already know, gratitude is a high energy practice that enhances one's growth and well-being, because lower forces have a much less pull on the conscious use attention when the heart is filled with gratitude. So here I will talk about happiness. So happiness is a state of being rather than doing or having certain outer things. It is knowing who you are and your intrinsic self-worth. And with this knowledge, you can do certain outer things that you enjoy, so you can feel God's blessings flowing through you, but not for anything or anyone to complete you or to fill a gap, because you are already full and complete by God's love to you. You need no one and nothing outside yourself to be whole and worthy. You just need to accept it. Accept your self-worth. So you may have heard of the term ego. So what is the ego? So the ego is the sum of the lower selves, the figure here. And it perceives life only through outer appearances. And it sees itself as a separate being, not as a connected being. and it is busy thinking about past and future. But it is not possible or healthy to let go of the ego all at once, and as long as one is still on earth, there is always an aspect of the ego that one needs to look at and surrender. But the ego will start to become less heavy, and the path of self-development is to embrace a gradual path of dismantling the lower selves, where one can live more from the heart and be more present in the moment. So what is intuition? So intuition is a kind of energy sensing and is a higher form of knowing. But it is tricky because energy signals can be colored by one's own perception filters and lower selves. But the more one can be neutral and open, the more accurate insights one can get. Because as we clear out more lower selves, then if we have a coming energy signal, we can sense its vibration without it interfering with the lower vibrations of the lower selves. So that is why intuition can be tricky, but it can be enhanced by just simply being neutral and open. So the analytical linear mind that the ego uses tries to know based on outer appearances, and it desperately wants to calculate things to feel in control, as if things follow a mathematical formula and predictable, but it's not. Also, an intuitive insight about, for example, what to do accelerates one's growth. So it is not about achieving a certain outer result, but what promotes growth and a better inner experience. So your intuition may lead you, for example, to a situation that can be difficult. But this is not because your intuition was wrong, but because it led you to a situation where you have an opportunity to let go of a certain reaction or lower self so that you can be more free in the mind. And then learn from it and make higher, more aware decisions. So what is emotion? So emotion is energy emotion or emotion. So a negative kind of energy emotion is generated by a lower self, the dotted line here, when the conscious you sees life through that self. So as we all know, the energy emotion can be overwhelming. But the first step is to realize that it is an impersonal moving energy. And your conscious self, your conscious awareness is not your thoughts and is not your feelings. It is more than this. So your conscious self has the ability to position itself at the eye of the hurricane where there is calm and observe the swirling energy instead of getting lost in it. So simply try to neutrally observe this energy when it arises. So this simple step allows you to not get lost in a negative emotion or reaction, and then gradually identify the lower self behind it and see the illusion behind this lower self and the light is projecting at you and let it go. But of course, to break a certain pattern of lower selves that gives a certain kind of repetitive, reoccurring patterns of thoughts, it may take days, months, or years. So there is no right time, and one needs to be gentle with the self. So by applying this simple technique, you can accelerate the process of clearing such negative emotions. And of course, there are many healing techniques out there that you can try and see what suits you. So when looking at the past in a neutral way, one can learn the lesson. But then there comes a point where after contemplating it and learning the lesson, there comes a point where it is time to consciously erase the memory. So after the lower self is dissolved, that caused you to react at that time in a certain way, and after lower energies are transmuted, one can become totally free from the past to move forward. And this requires a conscious effort to look with gratitude at the lessons learned, and with total unconditional forgiveness for one's own self and all involved, and then consciously erasing the mental images. And this is because by the grace of time, the past is no longer there. It does not exist in the physical plane, but it exists only as an image in one's own mind. And by letting go of the image, you can free up the frozen energy to move on and embrace the new. Because everything is energy, holding on to such images from the past will freeze up some energy by using your attention to keep holding it even subconsciously. So when you consciously let it go, you free up the energy to flow. So being aware, transcending oneself and tuning into higher frequency energies can transmute the lower energies generated by the lower selves and disperse it. And this leads to more inner peace, love, and joy. So the ego uses the linear analytical mind to constantly project problems or negative thoughts at you, making it more difficult to live in the moment. But by quieting the linear mind or monkey mind through any outer activity that brings you joy, such as, for example, meditation, walking, or painting, you can feel calm beyond the outer chatter of the mind. and be more centered and present in the moment, in the now. And studies have shown that such activities slow down the brain waves to a relaxed state known as the alpha state that can enhance one's well-being. So, because everything is energy, all senses are energy inputs translated by our conscious awareness into meaningful experiences. And there are signals that have a high vibration and are harmonious, enhancing a person's well being, while others are fear based and disharmonious. And this can be sensed through intuition, and it cannot be explained by the linear mind. So, physics has revealed many things about the underlying energy reality and space and time through Einstein's theory of relativity and quantum physics. One example is that quantum physics shows that information travels faster than light. Actually, it is instant transfer as shown by the phenomena known as quantum entanglement. And this shed the light of why people can sense each other sometimes instantly, even if separated by thousands of miles. So one can only be fulfilled by connecting to his or her higher self that senses God's unconditional love. While the ego cannot be fulfilled and it seeks to fill itself up from other people or by having more possessions. And sometimes it uses direct force and other times deception. But through discernment, one can see through ego games, whether from its own ego or from the ego of others. And this empowers one to not fall prey to such games. So the higher self sees the oneness of all life, and it seeks to raise up all life, because it knows that it is part of the whole, while the ego seeks to raise only itself by putting others down. And the ego can never be fulfilled because as it does this, more negative energies and feelings would be generated, and the more the conscious you loses its connection to the higher self. And the ego will try to then fill this by doing more outer things to feel more superior, which creates an even larger hole that becomes a bottomless pit that can never be fulfilled. And this depletes one's own energy and light. While in contrast, the higher self knows its intrinsic worth and knows that it needs no one and nothing outside itself to be whole and worthy. It just needs to accept it and be present in the moment. And that is why when one clears more lower selves, it becomes easier to do things out of joy of sharing the love with others, instead of wanting to fill a gap or a hole in the psyche, because one is already filled from within and feels whole and complete. And this is the key to inner freedom. So thank you for watching, and I hope this course helped you in your journey of self-development.